Hello, welcome to Foundation Paper Piecing of month 2 of our 2023 $5 Quilt Club. Here, let's get started. So these are the templates that we have on our website. If you have any questions on how to get to them, always give us a call. So the first thing is just to roughly cut all these out. You can use scissors, or you can stack them and use a rotary cutter. You just want to, I'm not being too particular about getting them perfectly on the lines, just enough so that the bulk of the paper is not in our way. So I'm just going to cut these out, real close to the edges. Try not to cut the edges, and all the way across here. So we will have 4 pieces to make, which is not too bad. And then these look like candy corn. So 2 little candy corn pieces. Cut them out. I did make the templates in color, so you can have a little bit easier time of distinguishing where the orange goes and where the black goes. So here we go, just roughly cutting, because we will trim them to exactly what they need to be later. So now we have all of our foundation pieces cut out. I just use regular copy paper from the printer. Amazon makes, there's one available on Amazon called Ecoficient, which is a really lightweight. It's an 18-pound instead of the traditional 20, which is really nice. Or you can get newsprint from Amazon. And it is also, it just rips easier. So if you find that it's too hard to remove your papers once your project is sewn, switch to something lighter than traditional copy paper. So first step will be to cut all of our pieces into 5-inch chunks here. So I am just going to leave both of my oranges on top of each other. In your kit, you could get either this orange, or you can get the other orange that has flowers on it. Let me see if I have a piece. Okay, I have a piece. I have scraps, so because I've already made one. So it's either orange. So you'll get 8 orange in your kit. In this particular one, I'm using solids because I'm making 2 of these quilts. So I'm making one with solids and I'm making one with prints, because I have to make 2 videos every month. So I'm making two quilts. Okay, so I'm just gonna lay these together. They don't have to be perfectly cut, and I'm just gonna cut 5 inches all the way across. So oops, if you have a sharp blade, that doesn't happen. Okay, so again, the 2-inch strip and the 4-inch strip, we're just going to cut into 5-inch lengths. So all the way, I'm gonna switch this so this is a little bit easier for me to cut. Now you can't see it as well, but just laying a 5-inch ruler all the way across and cutting these strips so that I can just piece them and everything is ready to cut. And if one is just a little bit longer, then the last one is a little bit longer. Thing you definitely want to make sure you do is get rid of the salvages. We do not want that in our project. Those holes never go away and they always look ugly. So, okay, I'm going to change my rotary blade for sure. It's not supposed to, it's supposed to cut nice and easy. Okay, so now that I have all of my my colored pieces cut, those are gonna go right here. So you have D1, D2. When you only have 2 pieces, those are interchangeable, so you can start with either one. Also with solids, really great because there's no right or wrong side. You can just go ahead and set this down, be like, wow, yep, that is absolutely enough fabric to cover D1. Take a little bit of glue. I love Elmer's glue for this. Water soluble, doesn't leave any residues on your fabric. And then you can use your add a quarter ruler or just a piece of cardstock, and get a nice nice fold of your paper, and then you can use your add a quarter ruler. Oh, these things are so nice. And then you can cut that perfect 1/4 inch, so you can line up your nice straight edge here and stitch all the way across. And when we are stitching with paper piecing, we always have our stitch length at 1.5 or lower. So right now I'm at 2.4, which is the standard generally. I'm going to go all the way down to 1.5, and I'm just going to stitch all the way across here. So, and again, I'm stitching all the way across the seam allowance. So you can see here that I've stitched all the way across the seam allowance. Okay, so you want to start here, go all the way across, try to stay on that line. And then here we go. There's our first piece. So fun and easy, right? So all we got to do is press that. Make sure that it gets nice and flat. So when we don't press our paper pieces, sometimes when it's really critical where they line up or they match to each other, you won't get that. It will fold and it won't be nice and straight. So when they are nice and flat, it's easier also for trimming. So that is one. And then we're gonna go ahead and do the other one. So very, very easy. Love this kind of paper piecing. It's nice and generous. You're not gonna have too little fabric. Glue it down. Fold your fabric or fold your paper. Use your 1/4 ruler to get your nice 1/4 inch. Oops. Oh, I really need to change that blade. I'm gonna suffer through it. Okay, line it up. So nice right there, and then sew clean across that that seam allowance. A little slow. Okay, so there we go. There's our last piece. Looks like I got some fuzz on there. Okay, so just gonna press that real quick, and then I can show you how I trim that. So you can use your 1/4 ruler to trim, but again, I'm just a huge fan of these Quilter Select rulers because they just don't slip. So this is a little short of a ruler. If I had a longer one, I would definitely use it so that it would cover this whole length, but I'm just gonna use the blade's length to try to get all of that done. See if I can do that. And then I'm just gonna push straight down on the rotary cutter to get those top parts cut. Then rotate my ruler and cut. Yep, try to move your fabric pieces before you move your ruler to make sure that everything is cut nice and evenly. In case you need to go over it again, get a bad blade like mine. All right, there we go. Looks like a cute little candy corn. Okay, there's one. Now you just gotta do that one more time. All right, so to show you the little bit more complicated block, has just 4 pieces, but we're gonna start with the same thing. So I'm gonna take my first block, my first fabric, and use a little bit of glue and position it down. So please iron your fabric, make sure there's no wrinkles in there. It's not a great, that way it will look nicer for sure. And then I'm just gonna use my ruler, and I'm gonna bend just that top part of the fabric around the edge and then remove the ruler, and then I can get a nice crisp fold in the fabric right on the line. And then again, we're going to cut that so that it's a perfect 1/4 inch. And then we're gonna line up. Okay, I'm gonna press that. That is just way too wrinkly. Can't take it. Okay, so now I'm gonna line up this with the edge so that it's a nice 1/4 inch, and I'm going to see this triangle piece in the background here. You can barely see that through the paper. And then we want to make sure that this fabric is larger than that, which it's overkill, which is perfect. That's exactly what we want. So once that's lined up nicely, I'm going to slide it over here to the M7. The M7 has recessed feed dogs, so there's nothing that's going to get folded back. So you can see how it's nice and flat right there. So I'm not going to accidentally stitch my fabric folded down. So, but if you don't have a really seamless workspace like this, you know, make sure you pin this to make sure that nothing is going to be moving as you slide it across. So the M7 is just it's a nice way to spoil yourself. Okay, so here we go. There we go. first one done. And again, we're going to have to press this because if we don't press it, then we might stitch it down when it's just folded like that. And then we'll have less accuracy, okay? So I'm going to go take this to the iron here and give that a nice press. Okay, look at that, nice and flat. Okay, so now we just have these two pieces on the sides. So you can do either one in either order, but we'll just follow the directions here. It says A3. So you will have to tear the paper a little bit, and it does tear pretty nicely. You can use your ruler or a piece of cardstock, line that up, get a line to score across, and then fold on. So nice. Use your add a quarter or any ruler. Oops. And then cut all the way across. And now we can line it up with a black piece. So let me grab some black fabric. So you should have one very long piece of black. And you can totally cut all of these into pieces. You will need them to be, before you stitch them on there. So you will need them to be, geez, what is that? About 6 inches maybe? No, it's more than that. Let's see. So you want a piece of black fabric that's probably about 8 inches. So, but to save time, you don't have to cut that if you don't want to. You can cut it after you stitch it together. So the one thing that you have to make sure though is that you're not including the selvages in your project. So I'm sufficiently away from the edge there, and I have this lined up with my 1/4 inch. So all I'm gonna do is flip that over and pull that over to my sewing machine and stitch clearing through the seam allowance all the way down. Okay. Now I can flip that open, press that, and trim off all my extra fabric. So it does get kind of, if you don't trim your pieces before you sew them and you just use this long strip, it can kind of hit other stuff on your workspace and get in your way. But it will be the most efficient use of fabric because then we can tilt the next piece and get that to be really tilted and nested in there so that you're not wasting any fabric. So I'm just going to trim this across, and I'm gonna do one a little bit there because my ruler's not quite long enough, and then I'm gonna try to get both sides at once using this corner here. So I'm gonna line that up, go here, and all the way across there. So now, okay. So now here's my black. It's all nice and cut here. And now we can do the same thing for the other side. So we will have to rip the paper a tiny bit. Use our add a quarter ruler and fold that. Oops, now I have to rip the top as well. Okay, just gonna fold that all the way across. And get that guy to fold down too. There. And then trim away the excess, which is quite a bit. And then now we're going to line it up again. So this was where our previous piece was. And so if we're able to, let me flip this, line it up this way. Actually, yeah, okay. That's the way we want to go, this way. That way we can line it up our 1/4 inch here, and then we can use this piece that kind of goes inside that one. So if you had just cut this to 8 inches, it would be straight across right here. And so we're saving a just tiny bit of fabric. So that's just a personal preference. If you want to cut them before you get started, go for it. If you want to just cut them after, go for that too. So there's really not a right or wrong way, just as long as once this is folded over, you have enough black fabric, 1/4 inch on all sides of whatever weird shape you are sewing. In this case, it's this neat kite. So I'm just going to flip it straight over, pull it over to my workspace, and start stitching. Again, all the way through that seam allowance. Just try to stay on the black line. And then press it open, and then we'll trim all of this excess stuff away. So like you can see, there's definitely enough black fabric on there. I'm going to press this over here. You know, you can't see it. If you don't have a hot iron, seam roller works out really nice, especially if you have a really nice workspace. Okay, so now that is all pressed there. And so we can trim the rest of our block. Get all of this excess black off. Don't want all that extra fabric there. So I'm going to position this nice on the ruler so I can cut 2 corners at once without moving my project. And then tilt it and just cut this edge here, which my ruler is not long enough. Okay, there we go. Ta-da! Look at all these fuzzies. Okay, there is one half, almost half. So it's not half until you get one of these guys sewn on the edge. So that is how we are going to assemble our blocks. So you are going to sew, missing one more of my, where'd it go? I lost it. Here it is. Okay, so the way that we're going to sew this together is you're going to sew one of your, I'm going to call it a candy corn, to piece A. So you're going to do C to A, and you're going to sew that together, and that will be half your block. Then you're going to sew these 2 together. That's your other half. And then you're going to stitch them all together this way, and that will be your entire block. So with this pattern, it's really nice because there's nothing on the edges that have to line up. It is just going to be your center points. So it is always really helpful to take a pin. Well, I like to use Wonder Clips to hold my foundation pieces together, and then I take a pin and I push it directly down in the center, and it should come out directly on the center on the other side. That's how you know it is positioned in the right spot. So I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to take that right over to my sewing machine and stitch that all the way across here. Pause, take off my clip. I'm going to shift that a little bit because it looks like it moved a tiny bit. And I do love to use my walking foot because of the paper. It just provides a little bit more evenness with the stitching. So stitch all the way across, and when you open this up, your point should be a 1/4 inch from the edge. So this point is not directly on the edge, and that is good. That's what we want, because when we join these together, that means that that point will be perfectly centered, and it's not truncated at all. So that is how you sew that block. It is all, that is half. So I'm going to try to zip through the rest of this. I'm going to trim this and then stitch this really, really fast. that one. Now we're doing the next one. Let's see where my pieces went. Got it. Okay. B1 blue. Gold. Pass. Oops. Looks like I cut the fabric a little bit, so I'm going to move it down. Make sure it's covered on all sides. And then move it over here. So I'm going to just roughly cut this off here. That way it's not so annoying. And we'll do the last one. Line it up, make sure there's enough fabric on all the sides. Look at all that extra fabric. Woo! Okay, just pressing this down. And then we're gonna trim. It's my handy dandy Quilter Select. Position it so that I'm not gonna lose my seam allowance. Okay. Now we get to check layout. Definitely not that. There we go. All right, so that looks a little bit better. Right sides together. Position this. Make sure that you, when you clip it together, check it with a pin. Put it straight down the center here, and it should come out right on the tip on the other side. So I love how that looks. I'm just going to hold that in place and take it right over to my sewing machine. Okay, now we're going to put these right sides together again. We want our points away from the edges. Just going to press that. So we should be able to nest your seams a bit here. So we want to be able to see that that is going to be having all our points directly together. Grab a pin here. So we want that point right there to come out directly on the point, and it looks like I missed. So I'm going to move that over so that it will come out right on the point. So I want it right here. Then I need to grab my one clip. That way, when I check this, when I open this, should have these points meeting really, really nicely. So that looks pretty good to me. If you have more pins or clips, this is kind of a large seam, so I would recommend pinning it or clipping it. Make sure all the layers stay together. Move that down and then do one final check here. So we want that to be right there. So actually I think that's off a tiny bit. So I want this to be right there. So you can see how that's exactly where that should be, so that this forms a nice diagonal line. So I think that looks better. But I'm also going to check it. Oh, I'm having a hard time picking those up. So I'm going to check it again. Straight down. Should come out directly on the center there. So that looks pretty good. Get all my layers. Sometimes your paper separates from your fabric. You just want to get all those layers to stay together. So the clips are really nice, but flathead pins are also really nice because they're not, and long ones. That way you can take a bigger bite and not flex your fabric as much. So it should line up to give you a nice seam in the center. So when I'm really worried about whether or not that lines up, I will just stitch my center and check that out and make sure that that's going to be okay before I stitch the entire seam, because nobody likes seam ripping. So if I just stitch right there, then I can verify that I like that, and I do. I think that looks really good. So I can go ahead and just continue stitching the rest of the seam. So I'm just going to reline that up because I did take out my pen so I could look at it. And I'm going to stitch all the way down the edges here. Oh no, should have kept that pinned. So it looks like the paper just is crazy. And then we open it up and we have a very nice pointed center. So it is kind of bulky in the center. So if you want, you can open that up to reduce some of that crazy bulk. And you can finger press it. You can use one of those cool seam rollers. or you can use a hot iron, and that will decrease the amount of bulk that's right there. So since this one is super bulky, I would do a stay stitch all the way around the edges, which is just like a basting stitch, so that you can guarantee that none of these edges are going to stretch, and that you can get all of these papers out when it comes time to remove them. So it is totally okay to remove them from your seams right away, because we do not want, when we stitch this to the next block, we don't want to have all those itty bitty little papers. They get so annoying to remove, at the end. So you can go ahead and remove the papers from your seam allowances and have no worries at all about that and anything going anywhere. So just for keeping everything nice and square, it is good to do stitching all the way around the edges. So it looks like I lost a little bit, but that already feels like 1,000 times better. So I'm going to hit this with the iron, and that way I can stitch the edges down. Okay, so I've just hit these with the iron there so that I'm going to change my stitch length to 3.5, and then I'm just going to stitch all the way around the edges here. So it's just going to zoom along. I'm going to stitch within the seam allowance. Oops, I went off it there. All the way across. And once you do this, then you can trim your block to 10 inches. If it's not 10 inches, then you can remove your papers. So I'm just going to go all the way across, just staying within the seam allowance. Looks like I went off it again. It's so hard without a foot pedal. Okay. Okay, and last one. So, okay, there's our completed block. I think it looks rather spiffy, so it's just a little extra thread. So now that this is stay stitched, you can trim your block to 10 inches, and it should be perfectly 10 inches. If it is not, then this is the time to trim it. This not Quilter Select, this is Creative Grids, is a really nice squaring up ruler, because it will make sure that when you trim your block, you're going to put the center of it directly on the center, so that your pinwheel point will be right in the middle. And then if you have anything excess, you can trim off everything there to be exactly 10 inches, because it will make us so happy when we go to join our blocks at the very, very end. So this is how you make your month 2 foundation paper piecing block. If you guys have any questions, always feel free to give me an email, call, or text. I will always answer the phone during business hours, and we are open 7 days a week and happy to help. If you have any other questions, just feel free to give me a shout.